Welcome, Rising Tide Talkers. I'm Matt, a roleplay chat Capelli, and today we're going to be talking about being a tabletop RPG crafter and what it takes to succeed as a crafter in this space. Today, I'm joined by an expert creative in the TTRPG maker space. He is a streamer, a TTRPG personality, and best known for his beautiful glass etchings. Please join me in welcoming Nix, also known as MC Etchings, to the Rising Tide Talk today. Nix, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm pumped. Talking about crafting is, like I said, something that I craft on the side. I do some terrain. I do some of that kind of good stuff. Got the hot wire cutter, and I've dabbled in trying to sell that stuff on like Etsy and things. So I'm really excited to hear somebody who knows what they're talking about, because I don't when it comes to this kind of stuff. But yeah, so I'm hoping today we're gonna cover kind of three main pillars as it pertains to crafting. The first one, just the basics, the definitions, that kind of stuff. Then we'll shuffle on over to talk about just generic advice for people getting started, kind of dipping their toes into the TTRPG making space. And then talk a little bit about, specifics on selling your goods, whether that be in person or digitally. And then the last 10 minutes or so of the show, we're going to dedicate to questions from the audience. So people who are here listening today, if you have questions that you want to ask Nix about crafting, selling your crafts, things like that, please post them in the RT Discussions forum entitled Nix Talks Succeeding as a Crafter in the TTRPG Space. So go post them there, put them there. If you want to hype us up in chat here too, I'm not going to say no, but if you have specific questions that you want saved and spoken to tonight, please put them there, and then I'll make sure to save, 10, 15 minutes at the end here to cover that. All right, I've been talking a lot, Nix. I think it's your turn. I'm going to pass the microphone over to you. Let's talk about being a crafter. When we say, being a maker or crafter in the TTRPG space, what are we talking about? What kind of products or services kind of come to mind to you?
For me, I don't take a super hard line with you must build with your hands using the tools of our forebears kind of a crafting. I consider people who do 3D, just the 3D print files, that's all they craft. They make that digitally and then that's it. I consider them crafters too. For me, it's, do you take what you see in your imagination and do you manipulate something to make it become? That's the essence of crafting for me.
I love that. I love that so much because you're right. Yeah, it could be a physical product just as it could be a digital file that manifests itself into something else. Mm-hmm. Is there a line there? Would you consider artists that are making maps or making other kinds of digital tools for a virtual tabletop? Would that fall as a crafter, you think, or would that kind of be its own space?
It's kind of, for me, it's a very conglomerate artist maker crafter. All kind of falls in the same Venn diagram for me. Mm-hmm. Because just a physical artist is no less working with their hands than somebody carving wood. It's just different mediums to create the thing that's crept into your imagination and is burning you up until you make it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's that drive to make the thing.
Cool. I love it. So yeah, making the thing. And it's a satisfying thing, isn't it? Even if it's not for a marketplace of any kind, making something with your own hands or creatively, that kind of output, it definitely, I think everybody here speaks that language, whether we're writing a tabletop RPG adventure or making dice or whatever. So yeah, awesome. As far though as the TTRPG space goes, what do you think some of the, in your experience, some of the kinds of crafts that resonate the best with the TTRPG community? Maybe it can be specific products of yours that you were like, wow, I wasn't expecting that to be a big hit, but it was, or kind of things of that nature.
Stuff that, well, in a broader term, crafts that resonate well with the TTRPG crowd, like wood crafting, 3D printing, dice making, of course. All of those things, the wood crafting and the 3D printing can be used to make all of the little knickknacks and trinkets and bric-a-brac that we like to have to build our little TTRPG personal shrines when we play in live space. So any kind of craft that lends itself to that, I've known every make and model of dice bag maker. Whether it be somebody who just, does the art and screen prints on pre-made bags, people that actually make canvas bags, my cat's here, people that, sew things from scratch, people that crochet or knit or any of those things. Like I've seen dice bags run the gambit of fiber arts, and I love it. For me and mine, what resonated really well, because like I've been doing glass etching. I think I was apprenticed when I was 15. So I've been doing this for about 30 years. And it was very much just like kitschy barware.
Mm-hmm.
And then just doing that for years for like weddings and, friends and, world's best dad mugs and stuff like that. And then just like wanting to do something different and looking around at the other stuff that I do. And I was like, well, I love tabletop gaming. What about what I do works in that space? So I start looking at different types of fancy glasses and materials and things like that. And I started out with barware because like the food and drink is just like an integral part of the gaming with friends experience.
Yeah, definitely.
So like people really enjoy like themed glassware for the whole group. I've done a ton of people hire artists to get character art made of their characters. And then they'll ask the artist, is it okay if I have somebody etch this onto a pint glass?
Oh, that's cool.
I do a lot of character art on pint glasses for people, and they'll either, they'll use them for the majority of the campaign, and when the campaign's done, they'll put their mini in the glass, their favorite D20 in the glass, and put the glass in the shrine of campaigns completed characters I've loved.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I do the generic stuff like, ranger glasses, varying glasses, stuff like that. And people will, I've seen people put together like little gaming nooks. I had somebody pick up one of every class, and they told me they were going to pair a miniature with it and then the relevant dice for that class and just put it up on a shelf. And when friends come over and they want to do a pickup game, oh, you want to play a ranger? Here's your glass, your dice, and your mini.
That's awesome. Very, very cool. I think I would definitely do something like that. I feel like completed campaigns, I have more of the campaigns that just end because scheduling issues prevent us from continuing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in my day I've maybe finished like 3.
Mm-hmm.
3. It's kind of embarrassing to admit, but no, that's awesome. I think what speaks to me most, Nix, is like you're saying, you have this passion for tabletop games and this amazing skill in glass etching, and you kind of smash them together, and it speaks to kind of the, your knowledge and to your expertise. So that's really, really awesome. One last question kind of in this first segment that I'd be curious to know, your perspective and your thoughts on where do you think the crafting community in the TTRPG space is headed? What kind of skills do you think would offer the most opportunity to somebody who's looking to kind of make crafts in this space?
The biggest skill that will allow you to really flourish in the TTRPG community is your ability to collaborate with other crafters. Like this is something your ability to network and get along with and work with crafters of different mediums.
Mm-hmm.
Combine your talents. I'm always just talking to woodcrafters to see if they're interested in I can etch up some pieces. Let's see if we can, embed them into your wood dice holders, stuff like that. The ability to collaborate with other people is like a huge skill. I think that crafters in these spaces are gonna need to cultivate.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I mean, just an understanding of your craft and what you're capable of, and being willing to deviate, venture into unknown things and try new things as far as technique or material or things like that. The ability to pivot has been integral to my survival as a crafter over the years.
Yeah, that two very, very awesome pieces of advice there, Nix. I think, especially I really like the collaborative piece, because 100%, you're not going to create something new without trying to mash together two different mediums that maybe have never been mashed up together before, and that's how you really get that breakaway stuff. I love that. I love that a lot. All right, do you think that gives a kind of good foundation for the rest of our advice moving forward? Is there anything else that you think needs to be said as far as definitions and foundational elements to crafting before we move on?
Foundational wise, thinking about it a lot over the last few years, when talking about success in a crafting space, spend a lot of time defining what success means to you.
Mm.
Does success mean buying a brand new car with cash? Or does success mean a quiet living, being able to do the things you love to do and collaborate with friends and make art and progress your skill and stuff like that? So really understanding at the point you're at when you start, what is your definition of what would success look like for you? With an understanding that that is going to change the deeper you get into your crafting journey. Your idea of success as you get older, as you explore new things, as life events happen to you, your idea of success is gonna meander.
Mm-hmm.
But always kind of be thinking on like, what does succeeding mean to me?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think I'm going to go out there and say I think that would be a fantastic piece of advice, kind of in all contexts of the TTRPG space. Whether you're here as a map maker, an adventure builder, a writer, an editor, a podcaster, what have you, or a more traditional craft like you're saying, Nick, some woodworking or dice making or resin pouring, that kind of stuff. Because definitely, I agree. And I think that segues beautifully into our advice for beginners, advice for people who are getting their toes wet in crafting in the TTRPG space. So, let's say we have that definition. We know what success means to us. What are some of the other first steps that you might recommend to somebody who wants to get started? They already have, let's presume they already have a craft that they're skilled at enough to consider selling it to others, but they haven't quite made that jump yet. What other kind of first steps would you recommend to somebody like that?
Be a person first. Before you're a crafter, before you're a person, before you are a seller of things, when you walk into any community, and I had my hard knocks with this one starting out, be a person first. Don't just kick in the door and be like, I have things to sell. Because like you don't have that much of an audience, people don't really know you, like, and it gets hard after a while, and you get discouraged really quickly when you're like, look at all the things I'm very proud of. And people, it's a lackluster response because you haven't introduced yourself. People don't know you. It's a 60-40 in this space of like whether or not I'm actually selling my craft or I'm selling myself as a person, as a part of the community, as a person people want to support. And this is the way to do it. So just kicking in the door and going, look, I have things for sale, and then getting like little to no response, which I did for years, is disheartening and discouraging. You don't know what to do. And so I just stopped and I spent time in the community. I interacted with people. I participated in events. When I was in events, I would always say, hey, are you guys doing any kind of a giveaway? Do you need some stuff? Like, I got some things, always have a few things willing to offer up to the community so that you can at least get some of your work out there. So that people go, oh, this is pretty nice. Oh, I won that, in the chat of a Twitch stream for a charity run playing like Pathfinder. And so it's important to establish yourself as a person first and a member of the community first before you expect to sell anything, really.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Definitely good. I'd be curious to dig in a little deeper, if you're comfortable, Nix, talking about, your experience starting off like that. So I take it then that you started off with your wares saying, hey, here I am, I'm selling all this stuff. Could you walk us through what those first steps were like for you and some of those first few sales and how that went?
Starting off, it was very much like I would pour a ton of my heart, soul, and work into making some things. And like I would just post links to Etsy listings. Just be like, hey, I made this thing, here it is for sale. And you're just another ad on the timeline at that point. I found what really started to get things moving is when I was talking about my work and sharing the process with people, because people deeply love getting to see the process of things. And once I stopped leading with the finished product and led with, here's what I'm going to work on today. Here's a few pictures of the raw material. Here's some steps that I take, and that people start to follow along on the journey of this thing that's being made from, raw materials to finished product. And along the way, a couple of people might fall in love with it. And they're waiting for you to say, okay, it's live in my store, and somebody might grab it.
Yeah, that's cool.
It was a little rough getting to that space of like, I posted it. Why don't people want it? Is it not pretty? And so your first instinct is to just like make the thing, make a dozen of the thing, put it online. Because like that's what you see in like these online spaces. It's like, I developed a thing and I put it online and I sold 100,000 units. And you're just like, well, I made one and I think it's really good, and I didn't sell one.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard because I had to unlearn chasing the pet rock, trying to rack my brain to try and figure out the thing that's going to sell 100,000 units.
Yeah, I see.
The goofy little thing I could make for nickels and sell for dollars. I had to unlearn that because that's what our society teaches us to chase, is that pet rock, that goofy little thing that you sell 100,000 units of. And I had to start chasing my passion again. Like, this is something I want to make. This is something I think is cool. And if you think this stuff is cool too, you're welcome to come along the journey.
Yeah, I see. That's really insightful, especially how you're saying, I don't want to say promoting it through the process, but, sharing the things that you care about with your community, hoping that they're going to care about it too. And then some folks will latch on. And I think when we think about being a crafter in this space, or in probably in any other space too, we often just think of maybe that person, their brand, and their finished products. But anybody who's creative in any way will tell you that there's definitely a lot more going on behind the scenes. You have to wear a whole lot of different hats to be successful. And even once you're successful, you have to keep wearing all of those hats to keep the ship floating. So I'd love for you to walk us through maybe some of those roles and responsibilities that you think are kind of unsung and underknown, maybe not underappreciated, but people just don't know some of the stuff that goes on behind the curtain. So I'd love to know what some of those roles might be that you think are important for your success or the success of other crafters.
Don't underestimate how tricky shipping and receiving can be. Primarily, all of my normal day-to-day jobs that I've ever had have been in like shipping, receiving, manufacturing. And so like I've got 20, 25, 26 years of shipping, receiving, manufacturing, procedural understanding under my belt. So I've got a bit of a leg up. As for when I started doing this, that was one of the first things I did. I was like, all right, what is my picking, packing, shipping procedure going to be so that I don't screw up these orders? Things don't get late, things don't get mislaid, so I don't accidentally overextend myself on the shipping cost because I didn't calculate things right along the way. Because that'll bite you as a small crafter. Shipping is one of the big pitfalls of a small crafter because it gets expensive. It gets prohibitive because you start to get limited. I can only ship to the US because outside of the US, it starts to get weird. I can ship a pendant that I made to Sweden for $16. That same exact pendant, if I ship it to Canada, it's $25 because of tariffs and taxes and all of the rigmarole stuff. So the people that understand the shipping and receiving process, that just like are locked in and that's their thing. God, I love those people.
I mean, I don't know if I want to get too into it right now but I mean, it sounds really important. Do you have advice for that? Like, where can people go to learn about some of these things? Do you have tools or templates or charts and guides that you would recommend? A
lot of the stuff I've kind of developed over the years of, I end up in a job and they're just like, you're in charge of shipping. And I'm like, why? They're like, because we need somebody. So I'm like,
it's complicated and no one else wants to do it.
Yeah, I was just left to figure it out. And so you got to sit down and figure out how you want your work to flow. You want your stuff to be easily found, but separated. So you don't accidentally grab from the wrong thing. You want to have checks and balances of like, okay, pick the item, put the item in the box, this, that, and the other. double check it to make sure it's the right item, compare it to invoices, this, that, and the other. Just find a workflow that works for you, that makes you check what you're doing multiple times before you hit ship. And always be willing to understand that you are going to get hurried, you're going to get buried, you're going to be flustered, you're going to be tired, and you're going to screw something up. And just, be willing to go, oh crap, and make it right.
Yeah, that's super important.
Yeah, I just screwed up an order the other day. They were like, you forgot a pendant. I was like, my bad. That'll be in the post tomorrow.
Yeah.
No fuss, no muss. And I got to eat that cost. That's doing business.
Yeah. And then, man, the cost of shipping is something else. I'm in Canada, and shipping something to the United States costs me less money than shipping something to like the West Coast, because our postal service is something special. But that's a really big role and responsibility that definitely I think is like an unsung hero of being a crafter in the space. I think by that same token, another thing that people often struggle with and can be really make or break is marketing and promotion. You touched a little bit on it earlier, right? When you were like posting the Etsy link and you just kind of disappear into the stream of doom scrolling as another ad that no one's going to click. And you gave already a really, really solid recommendation, I think, in letting people in on your process and kind of filming that. Do you have any other nuggets of information or recommendations on how to promote, where to promote, how to market your products so that they get seen and get purchased?
Be genuine with everything. A lot of people jump on trends to try and market things, this, that, and the other. Like if you see like a silly dance on the internet, and you're like, and you feel compelled to do that, and it seems fun to you, sweet. If you're like, oh god, now I got to learn this dance to try and sell my crap, don't do it. Because it's going to translate into people just being able to tell that like this is just, it's very pandering and it's not fun. But it's just, be genuine, let people in on the process, let people in, answer questions.
Yeah.
Take the time after you post to like answer the replies from people if they have questions about how you do what you do or why you do what you do. Take the time to interact with the people. Don't be Walmart. Don't just drop an ad and walk away. Be a person. Interact with people.
That's super solid advice. And that's part of the charm, right? Of buying something handcrafted by somebody. You do, in most cases, get the opportunity to interact with that person, to talk to them, to thank them. What's your take on like those little notes that people send with their stuff saying like, thank you for buying my stuff? Do you do that kind of stuff?
Oh, I handwrite every thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Just because it's enjoyable for me to do it, because I'm genuinely thankful for their support. I love doing what I do, and I only get to do it because people support me. So like I enjoy taking the time to write a little thank you note, because it's a genuine thank you. It's like I have a roof over my head and I have food in my refrigerator and I get to do what I love. I get to wake up and hang out with my cat and work on art because people are kind enough to support my work. So absolutely, I'm going to take the time to say thank you.
Yeah. I would imagine it's even more critical to do when you're just getting started, right? Creating that hopefully customers who will come back, a community of people who like your products, in the like shipping, receiving, packing, all of that good stuff. Are there certain things that you think people should be doing when they're starting off that maybe you stop doing over time? Or I'm thinking of, I don't know, one time I bought some coasters and I got a slightly bigger order for free from the creator because they were like, hey, I really appreciate you. Here's a little extra something. Is that something that you would recommend people do when they're just getting started? Or could that maybe be a bad thing? I don't know.
It's one of those things to where like if the compulsion to do it hits you and you have something laying around, don't sit around and like use up valuable resources or stress on whether or not to do it. like there are a lot of times when I'm packing an order because like I'm one of those compulsive crafters that like I just craft 24/7. That's just what I do. I sit here, I watch Twitch streams, I work on random bits of jewelry. So I just have boxes of things that I haven't even listed yet, just because it's self-medicating my ADHD to just fidget work. And so I'll keep that in the shipping space. And every now and again, I'm just like, have some of these. You know, or somebody will order something specific, and I'm like, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of this goofy piece that I have in that box over there. I'm going to send that with it too, because it feels like the same vibe. You know, and if you have the ability to do that, it's great. Like it makes you feel good. It makes the person supporting you feel good. It helps get the extra crafts that are laying around out of your house. But if you cannot, don't feel like you're like not being a crafter correctly.
Yeah.
Because you can only do so much when you're starting off, you know, and you got to focus on like bare bones, you know. Very few people have the ability to just be like, all right, I'm going to drop $50,000 on all of the things that I need to populate an entire storefront.
Definitely.
Some of us are lucky enough that like over the years now, my base cost as I've progressed in my craft and I've kind of like splintered off into ancillary crafts, a lot of my stuff that I make, like a lot of the materials I get for free. Like I do community cleanup. I pick up any glass that I find and I bring it home, and like some of it I will turn like liquor flasks that I find into like Ren Fair pirate flasks. I'll turn wine bottles. I'll break them up and cut them up and shape them on the grinder and turn them into pendants and earrings and stuff like that. That base cost is free. So it's easier for me to be able to just kind of spend resources like that because I have them, you know. So as a person progresses in their craft and they figure out, oh, I don't need to spend, or I can find this at least expensive, or I can do this tangential thing that's like a fraction of the cost, but is still very much indicative of me and my craft. I can do that as an extra thing. Once you start picking up those skills and those extra little thingamajigs that you make, you can start throwing them in there, you know, and it won't impact you too bad. But when you first start out, it's hard.
Yeah. Yes. Speaking of, and I'm Nix. I apologize. I'm kind of like going off the rails of the notes that I shared with you here, but I'm just being inspired by what you're saying. I can't help but think of like product reviews too. What kind of advice might you give to somebody who they're getting started, they have their digital storefront or a physical storefront, but their digital presence has no reviews or very few reviews? How important do you think it is to get those numbers up? And what kind of advice could you give to somebody to, you know, for their clientele to review their products? Like what kind of advice might you have to kind of get the reviews in?
You can try adding that like to the thank you. You know what I'm saying? As you're writing your thank you note, you can say, hey, you know, it's a great way to tip a digital or an artist who sells on a digital storefront is to leave a review, you know, find some very sweet, non like do it way to like word that.
Yeah.
And just kind of say, hey, like a review would be great, positive or negative, because like if it's negative, then maybe I can focus on ways to make this experience better. It's a little bit harder for the like the handcrafted crowd.
Yeah.
Because like I said, if you're more of a person in the space, your review, everything is word of mouth. You know, you become, you know, the I know a guy. You know, when people are like, I think I need a present for my cousin, be like, I know that I got the perfect person. Here's their website. You know, so it's one of those things. Review versus like a really good word of mouth. You know, it depends on the type of craft business you run. If you're going more for like, I don't want to say drop shipper, but the more like retail style crafter, then like shop reviews are very important. If you're going the more artisanal cabin in the woods, that type of crafter, word of mouth is more important, and your presence in the community is a lot more important.
Yeah, that's really solid advice, and I hadn't thought of that kind of distinction, but I suppose that would be something you kind of want to figure out too, right? As you get started, where do you live as a crafter on that scale of artisanal cabin in the woods to storefront? That makes a lot of sense. One last little piece of advice here. that I can think of as it pertains to this like foundational advice for new crafters. And this one came from somebody in the community who asked me this ahead of time. I incorporated it into my show notes. But essentially, they asked us, how do you gauge, or do you try to gauge the kind of success a product might have ahead of time to kind of help you identify whether or not it's going to be successful, to kind of help you prepare, how much material do I buy or acquire ahead of time to make this thing? Do you do market research to find gaps, or do you just talk to your community? Like, how do you figure that out?
And that's actually like a really pertinent question for me, because I spend a lot of time going, okay, I need to do a new stock run of something. A lot of it for me personally is looking at what has done well in the past, how long it's been since I've done something similar, because I like to leave a nice gap of time between products that are vaguely similar. So if I have just done some stemless wine glasses, I won't do another stemless wine glass run for a while. But a lot of it is, what am I looking to make? What am I looking to market to people? What do I want to make? Because I'm going to have to make, a case of them. What do I want to, what do I actually want to work on for a case of something? Because it sucks having to slog through. I've done a couple of like corporate jobs where I had to put a corporate logo on something. And I'm like, I hate this more than anything.
Yeah. And I wonder, Nix, is that, I don't want to sound like, like the big bad evil corporate person here, but shuffling through like different types of products, making wine glasses and then waiting and then releasing wine glasses again later, is that like an intentional thing that you do to drum up, I don't want to say supply problems, but like, does that drum up excitement for something?
Oh, making things limited run. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do make things limited run. One, to kind of increase interest, because people doesn't like limited run, but also because I've burned myself before, because I'm like, all right, I'm going to make 17 cases of this. And I sell 3 units, so now I've got like 16 cases and 12 singles laying around. So now like, it's a little bit to create a limited edition feel. And it's a lot bit to make it so that I don't end up with 17 cases of something.
Yeah. Or get burnt out making 17 cases of something too, I would imagine. Yeah. Okay, cool.
And so like I really had to dial in my numbers as far as like, when I do a run, how many am I gonna, how well has this product sold in the past, as far as like the base product, like martini glasses. Do those go quick? Like martini glasses versus coffee mugs. Coffee mugs, I'll buy 2 cases. Martini glasses, if I do a run, I'll do 1, because they don't really sell that well.
I see. Yeah. And is that something that you base off of kind of just your past experience or the experience of others?
My past experience is selling stuff online and going through my inventory and going, wow, I should have got a lot of those.
Yeah, they're not moving quite as quick. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. All right. So now, Nix, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's say you're a creator, you're a crafter, and you've kind of figured out a lot of that foundational stuff. And now you're putting up a digital shop, or you're creating a physical presence at like a convention or something. I'd love to talk about the kinds of advice that you might have in that context. So the first question I have, let's try to maybe stick with digital for now, and then we'll slowly shift over to the physical. Let's say somebody is building up a digital shop. What kind of things do you do that you think really succeed and allow a digital shop to shine?
Just starting out building a digital shop, as make it small and make it easy. Make your things easy to find and just easy to interact with. Click, do, boop, done. As much as you can do that, the better. It gets really hard if you're not a web space person, but you're just like, you're a denizen of the internet, but you're not a web store aficionado.
Yeah.
You don't understand the backstage part of it, and you're trying to make a shop that works. It can be intimidating and hard, and you hear people talking about SEOs and this, all this, that, and the other. I have no idea how any of that stuff works. I don't track analytics. My brain is not wired that way. I just can't. I just try to make a fun and entertaining web space that is as easily navigable as possible. If you're going for like places like Shopify that allow you to attach a blog space to your store, those are great. You can do post entries about custom jobs that you've done, show your process there, walk people through things, have a backlog gallery. Like I'm trying to slowly fill in mine, 15 to 16 years of doing this professionally, of like all of the things I've been etching and then taking pictures of like building them out by section, so people can just go and peruse through like, oh, here's his Star Wars art, here's his Buffy the Vampire Slayer etchings, and just go through and just easily just look at all the stuff in like a blog style format. And then another section that's just like, come with me on this journey as we work on this piece together. And you can just fill in, you can put your personality.
Yeah. And as far as digital marketplaces go, I think Etsy is probably a big one that people will recognize. Are there other alternatives that you might recommend? Other places people should think of when they think of selling their products digitally?
If you're just starting out, I started out when like Etsy first started and was there with them from their descent into just the worst. If you're just starting out these days, I would say avoid Etsy. Ko-fi has a shop feature. The shipping portion of it is extremely clunky. You have to do everything by hand.
Okay. Wow.
Like the shipping section in the Ko-fi shop, if I have a product and I want it to ship everywhere, but I can't offer it for free shipping everywhere, it just gives you ship everywhere, and you just put in a number. Now that, like, what do you put there? Do you put what it's going to cost to ship it to Kathmandu, or what it's going to cost to ship, one town over? Do you meet in the middle? How much cost are you going to eat in this process? You can go in and set it to by region and make multiple shipping profiles to closely dial in the prices there. But like, who when you're first starting out wants to sit down and do all of the research to figure out, and then it doesn't calculate. You have to calculate each product by weight, blah blah, all that, and hand input it. So that's so if you're just starting out and you're trying to get your feet underneath you, just Ko-fi shop, just your region only. Just start small, and if somebody, because I've found that if there's somebody from out of your shipping region that really, really wants something, they will message you and they will say, okay, what will it take to get this shipped to me? And then you can work on a person-to-person basis to figure out what exactly you need to charge them for shipping.
Yeah, that's super smart.
And it's also got a function of a digital tip jar attached to it, being Ko-fi. And I cannot recommend that crafters and artists, anybody on the internet who makes a thing, have a digital tip jar. There are people that appreciate the spaces that you build. They don't necessarily want to buy a thing, but they can give you $3 on a Ko-fi. Because they like the vibe you're creating out here in the digital space. I cannot recommend enough having a digital tip jar as a crafter, maker, artist.
Yeah, very, very solid advice. Now, maybe let's think about the physical space. So whenever I go anywhere, I love perusing a local game store or like the vendor halls at a convention. What kind of advice do you have for somebody wanting to start, maybe attend their first con as a vendor? Like that sounds like a very daunting thing. I imagine it is.
I just attended my first small local con. I have yet to be able to really do it because it's cost prohibitive for me as just a tiny creator. It's very hard sometimes to come up with them booth fees. But if you manage to just lock down a table at a small local con, it's intimidating. I'm lucky that I have a little bit of booth working experience under my belt.
Yeah.
I worked for a manufacturer that made accessories for mobility aids. So we would attend the Abilities Expo in multiple locations throughout the year. So I would go there. I was part of the advanced team that go with the products, set up the booth, get everything going, and then I would work the booth the entire weekend, working with people, selling stuff, mounting things to mobility aids, makes it so like I've got a fair bit of like booth space customer service under my belt. But that first time is intimidating, and just go and just be personable and be excited to talk about the things that you make.
Mm-hmm.
People love to talk about the things that people make with crafters in con spaces, and understand that sometimes it's going to be super overwhelming, sometimes it's going to be super underwhelming, and it's a coin toss on whether or not it's going to be successful. If your metric is like, I just want to be out there amongst the people interacting and handing out business cards, if I sell stuff, that's great. If you're tabling a con because you're like, if I don't make $300, I can't pay rent,
Mm-hmm.
you might want to rethink your model, because it's not a great way to operate.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of like TTRPG writers with physical versions of their games have like a corner of a table that somebody else is occupying, and you tip that person, you give them something for the real estate that you're taking on their table, but it's not the $300-$400 that it costs to get the table, and you don't need the banners, and you don't need the tablecloth, and you don't need the whatever else kind of things you might not think that you need. but that might be one thing. I don't know, does that feel like it translates into your space, Nix?
Yeah, that's one thing I've always wanted to do, is to have like a company, like the Crafters Collective Ltd kind of a thing, to where you rent the booth as the Crafters Collective, and then like whoever can attend that con, like I've got room for 4 people at this booth. The booth cost is $300 for the weekend. Here's your portion of it,
and then you can like rotate through it too.
Yeah, get like non-competing crafters at so you come like a TTRPG one-stop booth, where you've like, somebody that makes dice bags, somebody that makes dice trays, somebody that makes dice, and somebody makes etched glassware. So it's all kind of like a one-stop shop of like, well, I just decked out my whole table at this one booth. That's something I've always wanted to do.
Hey, it sounds like a great spot. I'd shop there for sure.
And it's ways that much smaller makers can gain access to a much larger space they never would be able to do on their own. Like I'm never going to be able to booth like PAX Unplugged. Like I couldn't afford the booth cost, and then the hotels, and then the travel with all of my very breakable things.
Yeah.
And so if you could find a way to make something like that, to where you can give multiple people a little bit of real estate in one spot under one umbrella, because I'm sure the large corporate entities would have a problem with like 5 people renting the same. I'm sure there's some clause that says 5 crafters can't rent the same booth.
Yeah, but if it's under one moniker or what have you, that might be better. Like you're saying, the collective or what have you. That'd be cool. That'd be really cool. I'm looking at the clock, and I think I maybe have time for one last question for you, Nix, and then we'll get into the conclusions and what have you. But as far as maybe selling physical products goes at a local game store, is that something that you've explored before? And if so, how would someone kind of approach that situation?
I've sold my stuff at physical spaces before. When I was living in California, it wasn't game stuff, and they weren't game stores. It was a local consignment shop that was for artists that just lived in that city.
Cool.
And it was smack in the middle of the downtown area, and it was like, these are local artisanal people for the tourists that want to visit. I've tried a little bit here locally since I've gotten here, and I haven't made much headway. You really got to be committed to bothering them, because they're busy people, and they've got inventory on their brain, and they're running a Magic tournament on Friday, and Steve called in sick, and like their car needs oil, and their spouse is sick, and they've got 1,000 things going on while running a business. And here comes a person just going, hey, they don't know you, be a person first, spend some time in the space. And then like when you can see that they're a little less overwhelmed, you're like, hey, can I buy a soda out of your own soda machine and pick your brain for a second, and come willing to talk about things like consignment, wholesale, because I've done both of those before, being able to say, look, just give me a small space in your store, I'll curate it, whatever, I'll give you a full price list of everything, whatever's sold, you just cut me a check at the end of the month, and keep a third for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Or, hey, if you really like my work and you think it'll sell here, maybe we'll do a test run. If it's something I can bulk make and wholesale to where you just call up and say, hey, I need 30 more units, I'm just about out of that thing, offer that instead of just saying, hey, can I set up camp in your shop
Mm-hmm.
and try and make money out of the corner. You need to be able to come to the table with, I want to help you make money.
Yeah.
I want to be a larger part of the local gaming community first and foremost. Like, I want to participate in events here, this, that, and the other. But come with some ideas and some plans of like, I think, this is a good spot over here. What do you think? We could make a little thing, get involved, buy dinner.
Yeah. Definitely don't make it work for them, right? It's got to be, you got to come with the plan. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Well, okay, awesome. I think, Nick, we covered as much as we could in an hour, and I think we really covered the gambit. I'm sure we could sit here and talk about a whole lot more other things too.
Real quick.
Oh, yes, please.
I was just going to say one extra piece of advice to the TTRPG crew. Don't be afraid to go into non-TTRPG spaces, such as consignment stores and whatnot, and see if they'd be interested, because there's nothing more fun than, as a geek in the wild, finding geeky stuff in non-geeky spaces.
Yeah.
There is nothing more exciting than going, whoa, they've got dice here? So don't be afraid to kind of like go outside your comfort zone as far as like approaching consignment business. Because it's a really fun thing as a nerd to be like, did you know they sell dice over at the consignment store on 3rd? It's fun.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. And, there's a lot more of us these days, I feel. Nerds and TTRPG players. So you never know where the lightning might strike. So that's fantastic advice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, before we say our goodbyes, Nix, I wanted to give you kind of one last opportunity to talk a little bit more about yourself, your products, and where people can find them. And then, of course, if you had other final thoughts or parting words as it pertains to succeeding as a crafter in the TTRPG space, I'll let you kind of have the microphone and you can talk about those two things, and then we'll say our goodbyes to the listeners.
Yeah, Nix, you can find me in most spaces as MC Etching in one form or another, or Punkle Nix. I primarily do glass etching. I just recently started making glass jewelry, doing community cleanup to gather recycled glass and make stuff like that. I enjoy it deeply. It's been a huge passion of mine, and it's allowed me a lot of freedom over the years to just kind of explore me as a human. And so I deeply appreciate anybody who supports me. I stream 3 days a week over on Twitch, mostly chats and crafts. I sit here and work on stuff. I've been doing a run of, I found some abandoned industrial mirror that a business had dumped on the side of the road, and I picked it up, and I've been making inked coasters out of them for the last week.
Oh, those look great.
So I've been inking those on Twitch and hanging out, playing video games from time to time. And I'm just a random internet silly person that just posts silly thoughts and sometimes ADHD deep thoughts that accidentally wound half the community because they're a little too relatable.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Nix, for being here. I highly recommend that everybody listening, whether that be here live today or, on YouTube land or podcast land, you go take a look at Nix's socials and also the storefront of all of the neat things that Nix has for sale. There's going to be links for sure posted now in the Discord community, but then also in the show notes for the podcast and YouTube channel. So go take a look. And while you're at it, don't forget to come and follow the TTRPG Rising Tide as well. We're at TTRPG Rising Tide on Tumblr, X, Blue Sky, and I think we're working on getting onto Threads too, but I'm not sure where we're at on that. But definitely come follow us there while you're at it, and please don't hesitate to spread the good word of the TTRPG Rising Tide Discord community. If you're listening on YouTube, give us a like, give us a subscribe, all that good stuff. If you're in podcast land, give us a review. Like Nick said, those reviews help us know if we're doing something right, or if something that's, if there's something wrong with the show and you want it to be addressed, that'd be the best way for us to know if, we need to make some changes. So please don't forget to do all of that good stuff. I've been Matt, roll_play_chat on all socials, and this has been another RT Talks. There will be a short break from the RT Talks. I'm taking a little bit of a family time for the month of July, so there's not going to be a show for July, but we are continuing our RT summer sessions. They're kind of like seminars that take place with all kinds of advice, kind of like TED Talks, but for TTRPG publishing. So the topic at hand is going to be self-publishing and getting your game made. That's taking place July 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So come join us for that, where Kimmy Hughes is going to be giving us a presentation and have kind of a Q&A segment for you to listen. And yeah, so outside of that, hang tight. There'll be another RT Talks coming in August. Stay tuned for updates on that. And yeah, so I've been Matt. And remember, folks, that a rising tide lifts all boats. Bye, everybody. Have a good one. Thanks again, Nix.
Thank you.